Here is a statement that might sound unbelievable today, but America already solved inequality once and then deliberately walked away from the solution. You are not struggling because you are lazy or bad with money. You are struggling because the economic system you live in was redesigned to stop working for people like you. Today, I am going to prove that by showing you how the United States built the strongest middle class in history after World War II, how that system collapsed in the 1970s, and how intentional policy choices shifted wealth away from workers and toward capital. Quick, dry moment. This is usually where someone says the free market fixes everything. Yes, eventually, after it finishes fixing yachts. Let's start with the post-war golden age. After World War II, wealth inequality was low, not because people were nicer, but because the rules were different. Top income and inheritance taxes were extremely high. Labour unions were strong and tied wages to productivity. Banks were regulated. Corporations could not easily move profits offshore. The backbone of this era was the Bretton Woods system, created in 1944 by 44 allied nations. Currencies were fixed to the US dollar, and the dollar was convertible to gold at $35 per ounce. This created stability and made the dollar the anchor of global trade. So, institutions like the IMF and World Bank, well, they were actually created to prevent chaos, not to encourage speculation. The results were, honestly, dramatic. From the late 1940s through the early 1970s, growth was strong, unemployment was low, housing was affordable, and a single income could support a family. This period is often called the golden age of capitalism, but the key word here is, regulated. And here's a bit of a sarcastic reality check. Turns out, when banks behave like banks, instead of, casinos, society does a whole lot better. That system depended on US trade surpluses, but by the 1960s, Vietnam War spending and the rebuilding of economies in Europe and Japan made that impossible. More dollars circulated globally than gold could support. On August 15, 1971, President Nixon suspended the dollar's convertibility into gold. That decision collapsed Bretton Woods and, unleashed floating exchange rates. Then came the oil shocks of the 1970s. Energy prices exploded. Transportation, manufacturing and food costs surged. Inflation rose while growth stalled. So the economy entered stagflation. There was high inflation, high unemployment and, stagnant growth. Workers started to lose their bargaining power, profits shrank, and honestly, business elites began to panic. Instead of, rebuilding the system that had worked before, powerful interests decided to change who the system actually worked for. In 1971, the Powell Memo urged business leaders to organize politically to protect capital. Corporations responded, pretty aggressively. The US Chamber of Commerce expanded rapidly, CEO groups formed, and corporate-funded think tanks began to spread new economic ideas. This was not accidental, it was coordinated. Sarcastic aside, when workers had unions, corporations decided they needed think tanks with much better marketing budgets. In 1979, Federal Reserve Chair Paul Volcker shifted policy toward monetarism, prioritizing inflation control over employment. Interest rates were pushed near 20% by 1981. Demand collapsed, factories closed, unemployment exceeded 10%. The Rust Belt was devastated. This policy protected the value of capital by crushing labor's bargaining power. Globally, dollar-denominated debt exploded. Developing nations defaulted. IMF programs imposed austerity, privatization, and deregulation. Poverty rose, inequality surged, wealth flowed upward. With labour weakened, political leaders moved in. In the United Kingdom, Margaret Thatcher crushed miners' unions after careful preparation. Manufacturing collapsed under high interest rates. In the United States, Ronald Reagan fired over 11,000 air traffic controllers during the PATCO strike, signaling that workers were, well, replaceable. Taxes on the wealthy were slashed. Regulation was rolled back. Wages, stopped rising with productivity after 1979. Ownership began winning. Labour began losing. Deregulation continued under both parties. Glass-Steagall was repealed in 1999. Finance exploded. By 2007, derivatives reached roughly $750 trillion in a global economy producing about $75 trillion annually. This set the stage for the 2008 financial crisis. CEO pay soared. Housing became an investment vehicle. Stock buybacks replaced wage growth. Today, the top 1% owns more wealth than the bottom 95% combined. Well, if you're actually enjoying learning how inequality was engineered, rather than just accidentally spilled, go ahead and hit like. The algorithms, really appreciate honesty. So, let's loop back to the opening claim, shall we? You're not struggling because you failed. You're struggling because, honestly, the economic system was deliberately redesigned to reward ownership over work. So, just to recap, I showed you how the post-war system created broad prosperity, how it collapsed in the 1970s, and how policy choices under Volcker, Thatcher, Reagan, and deregulation, well, they permanently shifted power away from labour. Was this helpful? Let me know in the comments. What part surprised you most? And what topic should we tackle next? Wages, inflation, retirement security, or building wealth in a tilted system? If you would rather understand the rules of the game than keep losing by surprise, follow moneytreeandme. Thank you so much for watching. Check out our moneytreeandme profile for more helpful financial literacy videos. moneytreeandme, providing better security and ensuring better